Thrilled you're here watching. I'm so thrilled we are about to present a really impactful discussion about women in prison and the incredible challenges they face in prison and also on their re-entry. The reason why we're doing this is because our film Angel Lady features a woman who has just been released from prison. And it's so interesting because you write a script and then you get to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the reality of what you created. We are going to talk specifically about what happens with women prisoners. That figure has jumped. Nancy's going to give us the specific figures, but I believe it's almost 700%.
Yeah, they've
right?
Nancy? Since the new drug laws came into effect, it jumped by even actually 800%, I believe.
Nancy Edwards Johnson, who comes from my hometown of Delaware, Ohio, whose father taught at the same university as my father. Nancy Edwards Johnson has spent over 20 years as a prison psychologist, and now she's in a private practice. She has, previous to working in the prison system, she was working in the foster care system. So her experience is so important to our film, to getting it right, but it's also so important if you care. Because this population is, Nancy, what are you calling it?
Well, it's invisible. It's facing alarming invisibility and a lack of resources is what I would say about this population. And when they come out of the prison system, they are coming out worse than when they went in. There's no reentry program to speak of that's viable. And so with looking at this population, you've got a group of women who, for the most part, they're poor, they're addicted to drugs, they have low self-esteem, and they're coming into a system where they're dehumanized and become numbers. So, and most of them, the vast majority, have had extensive childhood abuse that involves probably most of them have all of the above: emotional, sexual, physical, and neglect. And they're coming into a system that, for the most part, is where the structural dynamics mirror childhood abuse. So there's no privacy, there's no dignity, there's a use of confinement, there's harassment. It's probably best represented, and there's regular room searches. So the few possessions that they have, a group of men in black come in, flip their mattresses, dump all their things on the floor to look if there's anything that they shouldn't have. There's no respect at all. So it's a very dehumanizing environment for the most part that they're going into. And because what you said, there's been such an explosion in this population, there are some programs, like there's spiritually based programs, there's some educational programs, there's substance abuse programs, but many of the women can't access those because it's just an overwhelmed system. During the time that I was there, the population doubled over that 20 years. They put up 4 different dorms, each housing 250 women per dorm. There's no privacy. They're just kind of stacked together. And the other problem is not the problem, but they also are serving shorter sentences for drug abuse. And so they're not able to access the program. So 95% of the women that are coming into prison are addicted to some substance and or alcohol. And so they need treatment, obviously. They're uneducated, like less than about 30% of them have finished high school. So they don't have skills to go back. And now they've got a number when they leave prison. So it's really, and there's no support program other than maybe a parole officer. And they're mandated often to go back into the same counties, the same system where there's no support, where they're going back into maybe the same abusive relationship that they were in prior to coming in. They lack any kind of consistent supportive relationships for the most part on the outside.
That must have been so discouraging.
It's hard. Yeah, it was, I think, but what's amazing to me and what I really learned is getting to know them as I got to know them through doing therapy, how much strength they have to survive and the compassion that they had despite all that had happened in their lives. You really did see a lot of compassion for their peers. So they are not what they're painted to be so often in the movies. And so it's amazing the strength and the willpower that so many of them had.
Nancy, you're a horsewoman. You've
Yeah.
been riding all your life. And how did you happen onto the program in Ocala?
Ocala has a horse and equine horse program in the prison for women. There are 8 programs. That's the only women's prison program that has an equine program, but there are 8 other prisons that also have these programs. And if anybody watches that, you just have to Google Ocala Women's Prison Equine Program. It is really, really moving.
Almost all the people who work on the horse farms are women.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Right.
Yeah. They said, I've heard the statistic, don't quote me on it, but there were like 16,000 horse farms in Ohio. I went to many when I got a horse. I was looking for a place for her, and I don't think there were men who were running any of those barns. It was all women. So I think women are really drawn to horses. And of course, for the women who've been through what the women in prison have been through with, being victims, and horses are prey animals, I think there's just that kind of inherent connection. Yeah. So, and I think, having that, being able to be in nature and with the horses is a great way to come back into society. You see these women going out into nature and working with horses. So they're leaving that system where they're a number, and these horses who are greeting them, and horses are wonderful at mirroring your own feelings. So many of these women who've been abused are coming in and being able to nurture and have a sense of purpose for these horses that are beat up off the racetrack often. And they're learning skills that they can go and be barn managers, or learning skills, becoming more self-confident, finding a purpose in their life, and being able to manage this huge animal and help it to recover and to be adopted into a forever home. Oh, nice. It's just an amazing program. So I really wanted to recreate that and have that happen during the time that I was at the Ohio Reformatory. We came close, but unfortunately it didn't come through, but I'm still hopeful.
Well, what we're talking about now is being able to do something on reentry when people are released.
Right. And so that is something I think that, I'd love for it to come into the prison system, but also I'm looking at the possibility. The woman who is my own horse trainer has her own horse farm, and she's very interested, would love to host at her horse farm a reentry program. So, we've got the place to do it. Somebody who's interested. So I'm hoping to make that work.
Well, I feel really blessed that you and I saw each other at the reunion, and that we could.
I do too.
We could talk about this.
I know.
I'm so grateful that we have this track that we can draw people to just these possibilities.
I agree.